Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be looking at something that carries a lot of emotional weight today. We're diving into a really powerful piece from Medical Doc about developmental disorders, and more specifically, how society views kids who struggle to meet our expectations. You know, it's a heavy topic for sure, but it is absolutely crucial that we unpack it. So let's just get right into it and uncover what's actually going on here.
Okay, let's dive into this. Lack of effort. Ouch, right? I mean, it's a phrase almost all of us have heard. Or, let's be honest, in a moment of sheer frustration, maybe it's something we've even caught ourselves saying when a child just isn't doing what we expect them to do. It is such a harsh, heavy judgment, and yet we throw it around so casually in everyday life. But I want you to just imagine, for a second, being that child. Imagine the immense pressure, the incredible emotional friction that one simple phrase creates. You're already struggling, you're hitting a wall, and then you're just told, hey, you're simply not trying hard enough?
And then there's the other big one, the deeply damaging myth that it's simply a problem of motivation. This is a classic misunderstanding, and it cuts really deep. Actually, I want to ask you to do a quick self-check right now. Think about your own day-to-day life. When you see a kid really having a hard time with a task, have you ever, even unconsciously, slapped that label on them? Have you ever thought, they're just being lazy, or they just don't want to do it? It's kind of wild when you really stop and think about how easily we just brush off these incredibly complex struggles with such superficial, sweeping statements.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how this massive societal myth of laziness is completely at odds with actual medical reality. Like, totally at odds. When we take those misunderstandings we just talked about, those casual write-offs like lack of effort or no motivation, and we put them right up against the actual background reality, a totally different picture emerges. We're not dealing with personal negligence here. We aren't dealing with a lazy kid. We are literally talking about innate characteristics and profound physical differences in brain function. And honestly, getting our heads around that stark contrast is the absolutely essential first step we have to take. So let's get crystal clear on what developmental disorders actually are. This is not a behavioral choice. Let me repeat that. It's not a choice. It's not a kid being deliberately defiant or deciding to act out to ruin your day. It's a neurological reality. It's completely rooted in innate characteristics and actual differences in how their brain is wired to function. We really need to let the full weight of that sink in. When these kids can't do something, it is not because they want to slack off. It's not to cause trouble. There is a fundamental underlying neurological function at play here, and it is entirely outside of their willful control.
And look, we are just spitballing here. The Medical Doc article grounds all of this in the insights of a highly credible expert. We're talking about Dr. Rika Tei, a renowned child psychiatrist and the director of the Kodomo Mental Clinic Ashiba. Because she's a specialized physician who works day in and day out with countless kids and families navigating these exact challenges, she's able to clearly define these underlying neurological traits. Having that rock-solid medical foundation, that is exactly what gives us the permission and really the obligation to finally ditch that outdated, toxic mentality of just telling kids to try harder. And this brilliantly illustrates the incredible, real-world transformation that happens when we actually arm ourselves with correct knowledge. When we finally let go of that lack of effort myth, the very first thing that changes is how the child views themselves. All that heavy, unnecessary self-blame, it actually begins to fade away. And on top of that, it completely transforms how the surrounding adults interact with that child. Instead of backing a struggling kid into a corner out of sheer frustration, adults can step back, take a breath, and adopt a proactive perspective. They can focus on how to actually support them. Shedding these old misconceptions is like a beacon of hope. It allows us to build a much healthier, more supportive environment for absolutely everyone involved. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. Now that you know the real reason isn't a lack of effort, how will your interactions change today? Seriously, don't just absorb this new info and leave it here. Take it with you. The next time you see a child hitting a wall, frustrated and struggling, I want you to remember the reality of those brain function differences we talked about. Because your slight shift in understanding, that tiny little bit of extra empathy, it might just completely change a child's entire world. Thanks so much for joining me for today's Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.